Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor. And today we're going to be doing a very casual live stream, talking about just various events going on, reacting to some of the things that drew my attention from this week. And this is my plan going forward every Friday doing this. I know it was sort of a close vote, and I think 7 o'clock actually took ahead of um, 3 o'clock. So it's possible next week I'll do 7 p.m. because that's what people want. So I might switch off that or switch off between 7 p.m. and 3 p.m. live streaming. And people who listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify will, of course, get to hear this episode a day later. This will come out on Saturday on podcasts, but of course, you can listen. You can join us on YouTube if you're not listening. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can join us the day of. And I'm just very excited for today to be able to go through some of this. Obviously, I want to talk about JD Vance, RFK Jr., and and as well, sort of this drama going on with Anthony Mackie, who is, Sam Wilson. He was the Falcon. Now they're trying to make him Captain America, which is not going well. That movie's going to be a complete mess. It seems it'd be pretty miraculous, I'd say, if it actually gains people's attention for good things. But anyway, so we'll go through this. I'm just giving some people some time to get into the episode so we can have more people in live chat. I will be answering questions that I find good for this live stream. If you want to, whenever you come up with a question, just put it in the live chat. I'll do my best to keep track of that. And I might answer them in the middle of the stream. I might answer them at the end of the stream. It just depends on the question and, sort of what, whether it fits in with the topic at the time in which it is proposed. So, Ronnie S says, "Greetings, Connor. I very much enjoying your content. I appreciate that. It's really great. I do this content. I do this work not just for myself, though I enjoy it myself doing it, and I enjoy talking to various different people. Not everybody on my podcast would probably agree with each other on many different things, and I probably I don't agree with them on everything either. So it's just it's a great experience, picking the brains of various smart people and kind of learning myself and expressing my own opinions throughout. But we'll give it a few more minutes or maybe one more minute, and then we'll get into the topic at hand, or the first topic, which is sort of JD Vance's rise to become heir apparent. Now, is he heir apparent? I put that in the title. I think he's becoming more and more, and that's why I'm saying he's the rise to be heir apparent. Is he going to be the next president? Is he going to run? Is he going to win the Republican primary in 4 years? Well, 3 years. And that's a entirely different question. I can't answer that. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not really making those predictions. It seems like it's becoming more likely, and it seems like Donald Trump is making it more likely that he can pass the baton to JD Vance with confidence. Very different situation than Donald Trump had with Mike Pence, who was very much sort of not the antithesis to Donald Trump in temperament, yes, but not necessarily in policies. I think Mike Pence, though, was a establishment representative, and he was picked as VP to basically convince more establishment people and the evangelical right to support Donald Trump when it was a question of whether or not Trump would act like a conservative, which I think after his first term and even after was it uh, just a few, like a week or two of his presidency, I think you can say he's a conservative in sort of an American context. Obviously he's not very conservative in his personal life. He's very much, um, a liberal. But then again, so many people are these days. It's not really that abnormal. And he probably does represent, unfortunately, in those cases, the average American and where they stand. But let's let's get to the first sort of aspect of, or that I wanted to cover today. I'm just going to pull up the hold on. There. Okay. So JD Vance was on,
by the way, that
Fox News, and he was being interviewed, and I just want to listen to this a little bit of his interview, and we can sort of talk. I'll react
this
to it.
Old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country, and then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That is no way to run a society. And I think the profound difference that Donald Trump brings to the leadership of this country is the simple concept, America first. It doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership. And President Trump has been very clear about this, that puts the interests of American citizens first. In the same way that the British prime minister should care about Brits and the French should care about the French, we have an American president who cares primarily about Americans, and that's a very welcome change.
What is President Xi doing? What is Vladimir Putin?
He's looking after the Chinese. Putin is looking after the Russians. That they're entitled to do that. Thank God we now have an American president who's looking after the citizens of his own.
So, I mean, I think that's really just common sense, the way he puts it there. This, not surprising, though, this got a lot of attention and got people upset, especially liberal Christians, or even people that think they know Christianity, what Christianity should be, or what have you. And they come in and basically attack JD Vance for this. But it's very simple. It's sort of, you can't take care of the world. You can't fix the world without fixing yourself, then fixing your family. It's simple strategy. And I think the way JD Vance explains it with precision, without sort of backing down, is something new in some ways. Not new in the sense of like, obviously nothing is new under the sun, but what's new about it basically is that Christians, especially politicians, have basically been browbeaten into submission by liberal Christians or non-Christians, into basically treating every person the same. So as the American vice president, he has a right and a duty to take care of Americans first. And then if America's in a good position, then he has another responsibility, a lesser responsibility, to ensure the safety of others and prosperity and so on and so forth. But that has been lacking. That sort of ability to defend it has been lacking, at least from a very well defended position. While I would say the only other position that's been successful for, the American quote unquote right wing has been the libertarian position, which is basically we don't have the necessity to protect people because or all over the world, because that's not our duty. We are protecting ourselves and that sort of thing. But I don't think the libertarian position is the correct position. I don't think that that basically only our personal lives matter. I think we have a duty to others as well, but in this order, of course. And Rory Stewart, a very insufferable uh, English politician, uh, tweeted a bizarre take on John 15:12-13. Less Christian, more pagan, tribal. We should start worrying when politicians become theologians and assume to speak for Jesus and tell us which order to love. This is embarrassing because, of course, he does not act like he loves his own people. So, of course, he has no instinct to love the people that God has set right before him, but instead he basically has decided to take on the problems of the entire world while sacrificing his people at the altar. He is willing to completely throw people out. I've never heard him go after sort of the grooming gangs in the UK. I don't think he does. He was supporting Kamala Harris. He's basically a liberal Democrat in the UK, which is basically kind of the most insufferable political party in the United Kingdom. So it's funny to hear him attack Vance as being unchristian, even though he is barely a Christian, if he is Christian at all. I doubt he is, but he certainly doesn't act towards it, because sure, we are called to love, but he doesn't seem to love his neighbor. He doesn't seem to love the people that he comes from. He doesn't love his heritage. He doesn't seem to love anything else. This is kind of the attitude of basically of this kind of leftist. And then J. Vance tweeted in response, just Google Ordo, amoris. Aside from that, the idea that there isn't a hierarchy of obligations violates basic common sense. Does Rory really think his moral duties to his own children are the same as his duties to a stranger who lives thousands of miles away? Does anyone? And he also said, I've said before, and I say it again, the problem with Rory and people like him is that he has an IQ of 110 and thinks he has an IQ of 130. This false arrogance drives so much elite failure over the last 40 years, which is hilarious. He's basically, basically attacking him for being a midwit, which is kind of hilarious, that the way in which he basically is on the attack. I think that's also a real problem with a lot of traditional conservatives, is that they tend to be on the defense so much, is that they're not willing to actually fight for what they believe in, for the truth, for the faith. But JD Vance seems to be a different kind of politician, kind of Christian, that sort of isn't as prominent in our society today. He's representing a more I don't know, spirited Christianity, something that really isn't just lost in sort of the zeitgeist. He is saying and proposing truths that have been truths for a long time, which is nice to see. Not sort of the new wishy-washy kind of theology. Let's go to first in the Dewey Reams Bible, what Rory Stewart was quoting basically was, or he was saying this part in the Bible is, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love than this no man hath, than a man lay down his life for his friends. Which right there, Jesus is differentiating between types of love. He is saying that there is no greater love than the love that requires a man giving up his life for his friend. His friend is not some random person. His friend is someone that he knows and that he spent a great amount of time with. And I think that's incredibly important to point out. So the next verse that Rory Stewart is trying to sort of get around or to not even discuss, first, obviously Jesus is saying we must love everyone as he has loved us. Now, he then immediately says that no greater love than laying down your life for one's friend. That's immense. That's incredibly different than what Rory Stewart's saying, and that's already an example of sort of a hierarchical love. Now, I'm just going to go through this article. Let me just pull it up. This on Compact magazine. Let's see. In his discussion of the virtue of love, Thomas Aquinas addresses the key question: should we love one man more than another? At first glance, a love universalism rings true. Consider this mode of deduction. In his love, God offers salvation to all the world. We are called to imitate God. Therefore, we must love everyone and seek to promote their well-being. Aquinas does not dispute the conclusion. Yes, Christianity teaches that we must love widely. Jesus reiterates the great commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves, and he goes on to clarify that our neighbor includes those outside our families, communities, and nations. That's the gravamen of the parable of the Good Samaritan. But Aquinas refines the conclusion, concluding that we should not love all things in the same way to the same degree. For example, we should love good food and good company, but surely there are higher goods that we should love to a greater degree. If getting invited to the party requires you to dissemble or to pretend to hold views you know to be false, then you betray the higher love of truth for love of the less important love of a good spread and congenial companionship. Good health offers another example. It's something to love, which means seeking it for ourselves as well as for others. But health is not the highest good, as we discovered during the pandemic. To love physical well-being at the expense of spiritual goods such as companionship, to say nothing of. So, put simply, there is an Ordo amoris, an order of love. We need to love the right things in the right way. I think that sums it up pretty well. At it and basically say, oh, it's Aquinas, at least Protestants maybe, but the Aquinas, they'll say Aquinas isn't Jesus, so therefore, we don't have to listen to Aquinas. Though, of course, this is sort of, he's the angelic doctor. He has been considered a prominent, a cited theologian for hundreds of years, and I believe even many Protestants accept much of Aquinas. It's only a recent thing that this type of problem that people have would come to the forefront. It is, it's something purely of modernity, and I think it's a terrible precedent to set. And I think J.D. Vance has put forward this old opinion, this old view of life, old view of the world very well, that shows that he's not just, just another politician. I think he's at least trying. He's trying or appearing to try to be sort of exemplary. Now, you might disagree with him on different things. You might think he's faking it, or I don't know what your real problem. So I think that's, but the point is that whatever your personal opinion of JD Vance might be, he is definitely someone to look out for, and very possibly going to be the heir apparent to Donald Trump. And given the sort of the pathetic bench of the Democratic Party at the moment, this possibility of the future is very unlikely, in my opinion, that that Democrats will come up with somebody who can really do battle with JD Vance on a debate stage and beat him. He could the sort of the negatives that come with Trump, the sort of the unlikability of Donald Trump, the way he talks, the sort of the mannerisms he has, sort of the the views of his sort of past life, his many divorces, his his the way he's spoken about women, that sort of thing, that won't be affecting JD Vance. They'll try to do something similar, or they'll try to attack him on different grounds, but it will basically be the same. Now, next, I wanted to sort of talk. Well, first of all, if anybody has any questions or comments about Vance and that they'd like me to answer or something like that, or comment on, I'd be happy to do so. So if anybody's in the chat that would like that, be my guest. Fork Typhoon says Vance Barron 2028. Well, I think there's that'd be funny, but I think there's a age requirement for vice president as much as there is for president. So I don't think Barron can be vice president, though. Of course, Barron Trump. At least I'm assuming it's Barron Trump, which you mean. But that would be quite funny. But of course, I don't think it can happen. So, but yeah, I really enjoy JD Vance. I think he might be exactly what we need. He's not going to be perfect, but you're not going to get perfect. And I am of the opinion that you should not sacrifice the good in favor of the perfect. Fork Typhoon says there's no age requirement for Emperor, though. Yes, Emperor Barron will rise. I mean, if Trump has sort of had a more successful run than Caesar, I guess, in some sense. Caesar was, they assassinated him, and Trump, they tried to assassinate him many times, and the one that the bullet that hit him did not kill him. So I guess he's doing better than Julius Caesar in that situation. And yeah, I guess there's a lot of memes about the fact that Barron Trump becoming sort of Augustus, becoming the being Octavian, and his father being Julius Caesar. So that's unlikely, but a good laugh, a good entertaining thought. Anyways, so I want to talk about sort of the way RFK Jr. So RFK Jr. is, has been nominated to be HHS secretary, and I think a lot of people didn't know what to expect with RFK Jr., especially given his positions on abortion, at least previously, or at least the way he talks about abortion is not the kind of way that you'd want as someone who's pro-life, you'd want as an HHS secretary. And though, of course, Donald Trump's position is that the states should decide abortion, and that's probably a constitutional argument, and also a way of not having to deal with the issue himself. Whether he just doesn't want to deal with the topic is another thing. And it's probably more of a practical thing, as abortion is murder. Murder is a local law. It is a state law. Murder trials are not brought up in federal court. It is a state court thing. So therefore, in some ways it makes sense. But of course, there is a there are pro-life aspects to the federal government, like funding abortion, and that's sort of an important aspect of what we've been looking out for with RFK Jr. The question was he going to follow through on the stuff that Donald Trump had previously followed through on as president in his first term, trying to stop the federal government from paying for abortions in all over the world, funding Planned Parenthood. I mean, I don't think he's defunded Planned Parenthood in his first term, but he could possibly do that in his second term. And would an RFK Jr. as HHS secretary, would that prevent him from doing that, or would RFK Jr. get in his way? And that's, to me, that's an important question. And let's watch sort of RFK Jr. Let's see what he says about sort of about abortion. And it seems like he's definitely at least changed his opinion. At least if we're giving him the benefit of the doubt, he has changed his opinion somewhat, or to some degree. Now, people are, Laura in the chat basically was like saying, is IVF pro-life? No, IVF is not, and Donald Trump supports IVF, so I wouldn't imagine Robert F. Kennedy also I wouldn't imagine him being against it. But there's a larger pro-life agenda, and though it is very sad, and we should discourage anybody for supporting IVF, but let's look at sort of the productive side. I think if we're just going to be upset about IVF, we are again getting in the way of progress, of good things happening. If we're just going to abandon people that are not vote for people that are IVF or pro IVF, but are also anti-abortion. We want people that are both, but that's really hard to come by. I'm just saying, let's not let perfection be the enemy of the good. Okay, let's listen to RFK Jr. in his own words.
My position evolved.
Sorry, let me slow him down.
My position on it evolved, and it evolved because I learned some new things, and that, I don't flip-flop on issues. I don't care what the political way. If I flip-flop on issues, I wouldn't be sticking by, my position on vaccines for 15 years when the politics were against me. When I came out against Ukraine war during my announcement for my presidency, 86% of Americans were strongly in favor of the Ukraine war. It's irrelevant to me what the political implication, what I say. I want to be right on the issue. My understanding of abortion was this, that the late-term abortions, and those in the 8th and the 9th month, that almost none of them were elective, that they were, no woman wants to get pregnant, carry a baby for 9 months, and the day before have an abortion. Who would do that, and for what reason? That virtually all of those abortions, my assumption were because of medical problems where the mother's life or health was endangered. And if that was true, I don't want government making that decision for her. I don't want a bureaucrat to make it. I've been fighting for medical freedom for 18 years. I think people should have bodily autonomy. We should keep the government out of medical choices. What I learned in recent weeks was that a lot of those late-term abortions are, in fact, elective. And people make the decision for a variety of reasons. They break up a relationship or whatever, but it's sad, but it's true. And I don't think that should happen. I think the state does have a right to protect a child once they reach viability. The state has an interest in protecting them, and that in fact can be that it should be okay for the states to do that. So that's where I changed my, that's where I changed my position.
Thank you for clarifying that. I want to ask you one other thing about abortion, or actually it's not even about abortion, but we talked about God. You're a Catholic, grew up in that, had a spiritual awakening. When do you think that the soul enters the body?
Well, my opinion on that would be next to useless, because that's a philosophical issue. It's religious, it's a theological issue, and I suppose I just don't have an opinion of it. But what I believe is that the woman, until that baby is viable, that it should be the woman's choice. It's never, every abortion is a tragedy. Every abortion is a trauma, but
So obviously, this is by no stretch of the imagination, RFK Jr. is not fully pro-life or anything like that. And when I said in the title of this episode, the idea of him implementing a pro-life agenda, I'm not saying it's his pro-life agenda necessarily. It's Trump's pro-life agenda, or those around Trump, or what have you, whatever you want to think about it. So which we're going to talk about next. I have another video of him talking about how he's going to put into practice that, or the fact that he will do that, and that was just great. Now, Kneeling Catholic says that Nicole Shanahan, Bobby's running mate, is against IVF. That I did not know that. That's actually amazing. It's a little surprising, but that's really great. Kneeling Catholic also said she's our only hope for regulating IVF. Nicole Shanahan is really pushing for Bobby Kennedy to be confirmed as HHS secretary, and that's another aspect that I didn't know about, but that could really be a big boost, for our health, because RFK Jr. is great on health issues regarding, what we eat, and all the garbage that is being put into our systems by food companies and stuff like that, by big ag and all that jazz. And then he's great on vaccines as well, or at least he's skeptical, and I think we need skepticism. It's not my place. It's not my it's not where my knowledge is, but I believe good skepticism is healthy. Let's see. Now, this next aspect, or this next video, is RFK Jr. Basically, his answer he gives to Josh Hawley, senator of Missouri. Let's listen to what he says.
On NIH, under the first Trump presidency, HHS stopped new NIH research that involved human fetal tissue from elective abortions. Now, you were asked about this sort of tangentially yesterday by Senator Cantwell, and I want to get your quote right. You said to her correctly, you said stem cell research today can be done on umbilical cords and you don't need any fetal tissue, which is correct. My question to you is, will you reinstate President Trump's policy that ensures that no federal research and no federal tax dollars is conducted on fetal tissue taken from elective abortions?
yes.
Fantastic.
Okay. See that, just sort of generally, RFK Jr. seems very much interested in putting forward Trump's views, Trump's plan, and I think that's important. So we can only maybe expect RFK Jr. to be as good on pro-life issues as Trump is to some degree, and maybe even other people. But I think RFK Jr., for the most part, probably didn't even think about abortion very much until very recently. And he's never been a politician, so he's never been in political office, so it's not that surprising though of course his family is very much Americanist. It's not very, their Catholicism is more very cultural, not very theologically proper. So let's get this here. Okay.
Healthcare. How are you going to handle Title
I'm
10?
going to support President Trump's policies on Title 10. I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy. I agree with him that we cannot be a moral nation if we have 1.2 million abortions a year. I agree with him that the states should control abortion. President Trump has told me that he wants to end late-term abortions, and he wants to protect conscious exemptions, and that he wants to end federal funding for abortions here or abroad. That's Title 10. I serve at the pleasure of the president. I'm going to implement his policies.
Thank you for that.
He serves at the pleasure of the president, and he will implement Donald Trump's policies. Now, of course, I know there's a lot of sort of grandstanding and a lot of elements to hearings that is just for show. How much is this going to be implemented? How much of this is going to be in action? I think Donald Trump has shown relatively that he is trying to keep his word on many of his issues. And I think the fear, though I understand the fear, about like pro-life issues going to the side because the Republican platform was altered to really remove much talk of abortion. And I understand that criticism. I just think that the people surrounding Trump, the people that have pushed Trump into the office, into the White House, much of that is pro-life, and he's not just going to randomly put, all his staff's not going to suddenly become pro-choice. And I think that's an important thing to factor in. I think all of his judges that he will appoint will probably be pro-life uphold the overturning of Roe v. Wade, because that is the type of judges that conservatives are being sort of told to appoint. Sort of the Federalist Society, it was so important in the appointing of Trump's judges. I just don't think that that's going to go away just because Trump was talking less about abortion, during the campaign, which of course was probably more of a move on his part to get past the abortion issue than necessarily a undoing of his previous positions, which actually he at one point was, I believe I've heard this. I can't remember I can't pinpoint you to where it was, but I believe he originally wanted sort of to punish women who had abortions, treating it like murder as it is. But this is the type of thing that it's important to note. But of course, it's people aren't looking at this from a realist perspective very often, and I would consider myself a realist. I mean, I'm both an idealist and a realist. Practically, I'm a realist. Belief-wise, I'm an idealist. If that makes sense. But anyways, so that's sort of my take on the whole RFK Jr. Situation. Now, let me go through just quickly. I want to highlight two clips. One from Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation hearing, and one from Kash Patel, and they're all related to the sort of the making traditional Catholics out to be sort of like dangerous radicals, at least danger to the government, taking over the government or something like that. Of course, in the sense that traditional Catholics are radically socially different from regular people in society, I would say that's somewhat true, but not from a sense of dangerous taking over the government, and especially anytime soon. But I don't think that's not the mission of traditional Catholics. Most traditional Catholics are just going to Latin Mass and worshiping God. So let's sort of look at how Tulsi Gabbard brought this up, or how this was brought up in her hearing.
Personally, under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end.
I mean, you've got to say that this is a good thing. I don't think that the FBI should be basically investigating traditional Catholics. I think the anti-Catholicism of the previous administration, which I believe also, if I'm not mistaken, Biden also became a Freemason after joining or after leaving office. I need to double check that, and maybe we'll talk about that next week. I forgot about that as a topic. I should cover that at some point. But that's not going away necessarily. We can talk about it at a different time. But it was an incredibly anti-Catholic administration going after Catholics for worshiping in the old way is just a terrible precedent for future administrations, and incredibly anti-Catholic. And it's good that Tulsi Gabbard and now Kash Patel also are going to be fixing that situation, rectifying that. So let's look at this.
Will you also commit to me that you will conduct an investigation and find out who wrote this memo, who spread this memo, the field offices involved in this memo? Because I can tell you, we've had your predecessor sit right where you're sitting, and he has repeatedly lied to, there's no other word for it, lied to this committee. He told us initially that it didn't happen, that the FBI didn't make any list of churches. That's not true. We have it. A whistleblower brought forward the list for us. He said then that only one field office had worked on it. Turns out we know from another whistleblower, multiple field office worked on it. He said that it was never posted on the internal system. It turns out it was. We believe it's still in effect. Will you find out who was involved in this gross abuse of Americans' First Amendment rights? And will you discipline them? And if you possibly can, will you fire them, Mr. Patel, consistent with department policy and law?
Senator, you have my commitment to investigate any matters such as this one that are important to Congress. I will fully utilize, if confirmed, the investigative powers of the FBI to give you the information you require, and also to hold those accountable who violated the sacred trust placed in them at the FBI.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm glad you used the word sacred trust, because that's exactly what it is. The FBI is the most powerful law enforcement body in this nation, arguably the most powerful law enforcement body, at least in a free nation in the world. And to have this body corrupted politically such that it is targeting people of faith in this country and then lying about it to this committee and the American people is unimaginable. I'll be honest with you. I never thought this would happen in the United States of America. I just didn't. If you had told me 5 years ago we'd be reading memos like this, I would have said, no way, that's bad fiction. In fact, it's a horrible reality. The department needs to be cleaned up, the agency does, and rights restored and protected. I'm glad to hear you say that.
I think Josh Hawley is spectacular on these types of issues. And it's crazy because I think when he first ran in Missouri, I did not support his candidacy. But then again, I was much more libertarian at the time of that candidacy. I think that, so much has changed. My own knowledge has changed. The situation has changed. It's insane to me that the FBI is investigating basically people because they go to the traditional Latin Mass. That is preposterous from a strategy to finding anybody, attempting to commit crimes. It's a bad strategy just to have a blanket thing like that as sort of FBI policy. Now, of course, if somebody commits a crime, a murder, something heinous, obviously just because they are of a certain religion does not make them, they shouldn't be protected because of their religion for doing heinous crimes. So of course that does not. So, but this is not what they're doing. They're not investigating people that have committed crimes, but the crime that they've committed is basically being a traditional Catholic. This is horrendous and terrifying. And Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard bringing it up, and Kash Patel, basically saying that he will do away with this. He'll investigate it. He'll hopefully punish the people that that started this. That would be great and necessary. Now, the last bit of sort of news that I wanted to cover was Anthony Mackie talking about what Captain America means to him. So he's coming out as sort of the, Captain America 4, Brave New World or whatever, which has been getting reshoots after reshoots. It's a terribly made, from what I can tell, based on the fact that they need to constantly make reshoots. This obviously means they didn't have a very good idea for a story. Marvel has been a complete flop as of late, and I'm not surprised. But this might have been the nail in the coffin for this movie upcoming. So let's listen.
For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term, America should be one of those representations. Like, it's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity. Someone who is trustworthy and dependable. It's kind of, this is kind of like an aspect of a dream coming true. When I was a kid, all of us as actors, I believe, want to get back to that day before someone told you no.
Well, that's basically all he said. And then he tried to salvage the situation because he knew he messed up. And it seems like he definitely knew, even when he said what he said, that he messed up, but he failed to stop himself. He said, "Let me be clear about this. I'm a proud American, and take on the shield of a hero like Cap is the honor of a lifetime. I have the utmost respect for those who serve and have served our country. Cap has universal characteristics that people all over the world can relate to." Yeah, which the most charitable interpretation of what he's saying is basically that Captain America doesn't just represent America. Now, what he basically said was it shouldn't represent America, that he doesn't represent America because Captain America is true to his word. He's prominent. He's a sort of he has great virtues, and Americans don't have those virtues. That's basically what he implied. But the sort of charitable interpretation is that no, it's just that these qualities aren't just exclusive to the United States, which I would agree with. But this is this is so bad from a PR standpoint. He's basically ruining his possibility of his movie making any money. Now, especially because I've heard the amount of money that they put into this movie is absolutely insane. So first of all, they'd have to make a lot of money back, and it's not if I believe it comes out in February, and February is not really a great not great month for movies, which will be difficult for them for that movie to overcome, and stuff like this. And the reputation Marvel has had with its sort of DEI policies, where it's been favoring sort of those diversity over good storytelling or entertaining storytelling. I mean, I look back at Marvel and I'm not that impressed. I used to be a big Marvel fan with the MCU, the movies and stuff like that, but it's my opinion of them have tanked not just as they have declined in quality, but also as I've learned more about fiction, entertainment, and I think the surfacey nature of Marvel is a problem. There's no real substance. It's just a lot of flash. And that's funny because, Flash, the DC hero. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Marvel. But it's all about Flash, no substance, and that's one of my big criticisms of Marvel, even in the past. Not just the last 5 years, not just since Endgame, not just since Captain Marvel or whatever. There's so many problems that you can think of with Marvel, but there's nothing of value that they're producing. Nothing that really lifts the soul. Nothing to do with the good, true, and the beautiful. Nothing even sort of thought-provoking or dealing with important moral issues. It's all just, surface nonsense. It's kind of, or, sort of like for it's very, it's the morals are basically basically kindergarten morals, which I have, it's basic, but it's there's no depth. It's not really going to help anyone. It's not really that complicated. It's not that impressive. They haven't done anything too amazing. I'm not saying that some of their movies aren't entertaining. They have been, but the more you get into really good fiction, the less interested I am in Marvel movies. But it's just so embarrassing, Anthony Mackie saying that Captain America does not represent America because, well, I mean, he was also talking to an international audience. He was in Italy, I believe, at the time. So that might explain his willingness to sort of maybe attack Americans or not highlight the Americanness of Captain America. But I think people will understand across the globe that Captain America is supposed to be about, or sort of a representation of America. Though, of course, Sam Wilson is not Captain America. Captain America is Steve Rogers. There's no question about that in my mind. Not that I'm the biggest fan of Captain America as a character, though I think there is a way probably to make him an entertaining character. I did enjoy his movies, the 3 movies. All 3 of them were very good. I'd probably think differently about them if I reviewed them now, going back and stuff like that. But that's sort of my the way I'm thinking about it. Anyways, if anybody has any questions, I'll be here for a few more minutes. You have my attention. So it's just, I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode, this live stream. If you liked this episode, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And before I go, I'm just going to play an ad for ProselyTies. I hope if you want to support the channel, listen, and if you're interested, go to ProselyTies, and this will explain it. If you are looking for a way to express your Catholic faith through fashion, look no further than ProselyTies. ProselyTies is a Catholic-owned tie company that sells beautiful and well-made ties. ProselyTies is offering Plotlines listeners 10% off if you use the code Plotlines. That's PLOTLINES, Plotlines. Use the link in the description to get your next tie. Now back to the show. Yes, so if you want to support the channel and you're interested in it, if you're a man and looking for a tie for yourself, if you're a woman and you have a boyfriend or your husband, you want to get a tie for them, check out ProselyTies. Great art, great work. I'm a real fan of their work, and if you're interested, I did an episode with the co-founders of ProselyTies. So check that out. I believe it was Monday that was released. So if you're interested in knowing more about that company, a Catholic-owned company, check that out. And thank you, everyone. It's just been a pleasure. And if you like this, and want more live streams like this, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. There doesn't seem to be any specific comments or questions, so we'll leave it at that. Thank you, everyone. God bless. Bye.